grass. I'd go and touch every wheat field in Kiev to avoid this depraved travesty.
Hello, my name is Tony. I'm not going to waste too much time and effort on bemoaning what the TV show has now become. There's more than enough analysis on YouTube and the internet generally covering that situation should anyone care to look. I'm simply going to say that when a TV show or any media is no longer for you, when you are no longer part of that target audience, and when the makers openly declare that you are not the type of audience they want anyway, and would much prefer it if you kindly fucked off and died on some patch of grass you were advised to go touch, then it's time to opt out, let it be, and move on. Which is what I've done. Some years back, in fact, right after Jodie Whittaker's first season as the Doctor. It was clear to me then where things were headed at that point, and in anticipation of them getting there, I left comparatively early. I won't say I wasn't sad initially, but I soon came to terms with it and moved on. I content myself with the knowledge that nearly 60 years of the real Doctor Who, that extensive back catalogue, the best times, was and remains mine. What the BBC and Disney have is what they've made of what's left, along with their massive new audience, whoever they are. They're welcome to it now, and good luck to them. The first episode of Doctor Who, The Unearthly Child, aired when I was 2 years old. Obviously way too young to be conscious of it. That awareness happened years later when I joined the collective of 60s kids who were thrilled by and hid behind scatter cushions and sofas in response to a unique cross-generational TV show like no other. My first real encounter with science fiction, a groundbreaking pop cultural phenomenon. The thing that impacted right off, that crept into the social DNA, imprinted itself on the fledgling psychology, was the theme music. As an infant, I would have heard it like so many others in similar circumstances. Black and white TV, fizzing, rolling and glitching in the corner of the room. Early on, that was the first element to be absorbed into the subconscious, and once it was there, that unforgettable pulsating electronic product of the BBC Radiophonic Workshop was never going to go away. It became a part of you, and you will always know it instantly. I find it hard to imagine that there are many people who wouldn't know what Doctor Who is about, but just in case, the Doctor is a humanoid alien who travels across and through space and time in a ship known as the TARDIS. A faulty camouflage circuit sees it stuck in the guise of an old-time police telephone box. The Doctor is, or was, not so sure about now, a Time Lord. Along with a series of companions in tow, together they face perilous adventures and confrontations with alien species and familiar characters from Earth history. The idea is, or was, not so sure about now, to protect planet Earth, right wrongs, and have fun. The Doctor encounters many antagonists, but his foremost enemies are a race known as the Daleks. They are an organic species irreparably damaged and mutated by thermonuclear war on their home planet of Skaro. They survive within mobile metal machines which provide protection, defense, and life support. Based on the Nazis by creator Terry Nation, their aims are conquest, domination, and the subjugation or eradication of others who are not like them. Just about everyone then. Ironically, very much like the showrunner and stars of the current series. Evil bastards, in other words. Astonishingly successful, it wasn't long before someone would get the notion of adapting the series into a feature film. Enter Amicus Productions and Milton Subotsky, who paid Daleks creator Terry Nation and the BBC £500 for the rights to make 3 Doctor Who and the Daleks motion pictures. Yep, you heard that right, 500 quid. Today that'll get you a standard ticket to the Glastonbury Festival and a Mountain Warehouse pop-up tent for 2. What it got the movie going public was 2 Doctor Who flicks made and released in 1965 and 1966 respectively. The first was Doctor Who and the Daleks, the second the more cumbersomely titled Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD. Both films were scripted by Milton Subotsky and starred Peter Cushing as the Good Doctor, and were directed by Gordon Fleming. On a personal note, Doctor Who and the Daleks, the movie, I've only ever seen on TV. It was screened by the BBC in the early 70s, Saturday evenings mostly. The second film I saw in the cinema on release, because my father thought it would be suitable entertainment for a 5-year-old. I can't remember anything about seeing the film itself, but on the walk to the theatre, which was somewhere in Newport, South Wales, we passed a shop window with a display promoting Daleks Invasion Earth. The centrepiece was a full-size blue Dalek, and I can remember with absolute vividity standing there holding my father's hand and looking at this incredible creation and believing completely that it was real. I was in awe of it. It was amazing. The lights on the head blinked on and off, and the eye stalk moved up and down. I've never forgotten it. The first film did well enough at the box office to result in the second being made. The second cost 60% more than the first and was a box office disappointment. That's why the planned third entry never came to be. Amicus shifted their focus back to horror flicks. When I was a kid, I loved both of those movies. Now the Blu-ray remasters have turned up and I've had a chance to revisit them. Are they shining examples of British 60s sci-fi genius, or, as many hardcore Whovians have suggested, cheap bastardized versions of a superior TV show made to cynically cash in? Well, I can only tell you what I think, which is hopefully why you're tuning in. If it's not, chances are we're both wide of the fucking mark. Before checking out the films themselves, it's worth noting some of the differences between them and the TV series. Peter Cushing's Doctor is an elderly scientist with the name Doctor Who. In the show, he was known only as the Doctor. Who wasn't his surname. Doctor Who was the title of the show. Cushing's Doctor isn't an alien. He seems to live with his two granddaughters, the youngest Susan Roberta Tovey and eldest Barbara Jenny Linden. In the second film, Barbara is replaced by his niece Louise, Jill Curzon. I don't know why. Roberta Tovey is back as Susan though. Cushing's Doctor has created or invented the TARDIS. It's still bigger on the inside than it is on the outside, but the interior looks markedly different to the one in the series. When Cushing played the role, William Hartnell, the original Doctor, was still playing the part on TV. He was replaced by Patrick Troughton towards the end of 1966 after being diagnosed with early stage dementia. This was the point when the writers introduced the notion of regeneration. The Doctor doesn't die as such, but regenerates as a different looking person with a different personality. It was used from then on whenever another actor took the part. Cushing's Doctor, not being an alien, can't regenerate, but he is in colour. The show was in black and white. There are other fundamental differences, and many fans to this day reject the two films for being non-canonical, whereas I tend to view them as separate entities distinct from the show itself and treat them as alternative versions. I don't intend to get hung up on a cyclical movie versus TV comparative debate, because that's a hide into nowhere. So, the films as films then, not whether they are faithful recreations of the TV show, because they're clearly not. That's already been established. Doctor Who and the Daleks kicks off in the home of Doctor Who, Peter Cushing, his granddaughter Barbara, Jenny Linden, and other granddaughter Susan, Roberta Tovey. The two girls are reading weighty science textbooks, the Doctor is reading a sci-fi comic. Barbara's new boyfriend, Ian Roy Castle, arrives, and the laboured comic pratfalls and buffoonery kick in. This got on my tits somewhat, even when I was a much more forgiving kid. Whilst Barbara shimmies away to get ready to go out with Ian, Doctor Who decides to show the hapless suitor his latest invention. He and Susan introduce Ian to the TARDIS, a vessel for travelling through time and space. Barbara finds them inside the machine, where Ian accidentally leans on the lever which activates TARDIS. As it wasn't set for any specific destination, they could be anywhere in the universe now. They have in fact landed on the planet Skaro in a petrified forest, a barren place scorched by the heat of some dreadful nuclear holocaust. In the distance is a metallic city. The Doctor fakes a TARDIS malfunction so that he and Susan can go and explore the city. Something of a mistake, as this is the home of the Daleks. Centuries previously, the Daleks decimated the planet in an atomic war waged on the other indigenous species, the Thals. They have only survived the lethal radiation by taking refuge in mechanical casings, whereas the Thals have developed drugs to counteract the radiation poisoning. I don't know how anyone stayed alive long enough to do this, but they did. Especially surprising considering the Thals are wimpy, effete cream puffs with iffy fashion sense and a tendency to go nuts with Mummy's makeup box. On top of this, the Thals are starving due to crop failure and have now travelled to the outskirts of the Dalek city in search of food. Must not have read the latest Dalek press release. Cutting to the chase, the Daleks use Susan to obtain a supply of Thal drugs which don't work for them, instead driving the test subjects into a self-destructive frenzy. Then they decide to detonate a bigger bomb to wipe out the Thals entirely. It's up to the Doctor, Susan, Barbara and Ian to join forces with the Thals to thwart the Daleks' plan and avert the countdown to absolute destruction. How you reckon they get on? In Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD, patrolling police constable Tom Campbell, Bernard Cribbins, is coshed during a nighttime raid on a London jewellery store. Stumbling into a police telephone box to call for help, he happens upon Doctor Who, Cushing, his granddaughter Susan Tovey, and niece Louise, Jill Curzon. It's the TARDIS, and is just about to leave for the future, something he's alarmed to discover when he comes round after passing out, and they've travelled forward in time to London 2150. The city is in ruins. The reason soon becomes apparent apparent when a Dalek emerges from the River Thames. Yes, the fiends have invaded Earth. Louise and Susan are taken under the protection of a human resistance force headed up by David Ray Brooks and Wyler Andrew Keir. The Doctor and Tom are taken captive, bundled into a flying saucer where they will be turned into brainwashed zombie-like goons known as Robo-Men. The Daleks use the Robo-Men as supporting militia armed enforcers. But what is it they're really up to? Well, they've dug a big mine in Bedfordshire using human slaves as labour, interring them in a sort of gulag. Apparently, Bedfordshire is the optimum drilling point to reach the Earth's core, as here there is a convergence between the planet's magnetic poles. Who knew? The Daleks plan to drop a great big bomb straight down the shaft, destroying the core, then replacing it with a device, I hope you're following this, that will enable them to pilot planet Earth like a massive spaceship. Then they'll fly it to the location of their home planet and live on it, assumedly because Skaro is a shithole wasteland and crap holiday destination. Not that planet Earth is likely to fare much better under Dalek rule. As a child, I never questioned it. Now, it makes no fucking sense whatsoever. An attack on the spaceship by the Resistance ends with the Doctor escaping with David, Tom and Louise being trapped aboard the saucer which takes off again, and Susan and Wyler legging it together. As if seeking to prove the adage, all roads lead to Rome, everyone is headed to the Bedfordshire mine one way or another, and a final cataclysmic confrontation with the Daleks and the Robo-Men. How you think that will go? The first film is eye-blisteringly bright and colourful, unrepentantly garish, very fond of what seem to be neon pink plastic shower curtains nailed to the walls, and a combination of electric purple and shocking crimson backdrops all over the place. Certainly headache-inducing for those with a sensitivity to an in-your-face palette. For me, though, it gives the film that richly oversaturated Forbidden Planet sort of atmosphere, and I can't say I'm averse to that maniac artiste with a fluorescent paintbox art direction style. It's got a reimagined version of a Doctor Who in it. Cushing plums for the doddery old duffer with a bit of steel and mischief under the hood going on. I find him impossible to dislike in anything really, and he was always in his element when fiddling with props and gadgets, and this Doctor Who part gives him plenty of opportunity for that. Roy Castle was brought in to mug and mime and flippantly dick around as the resident comedy relief. He overacts and overreacts both at the same time. Castle was a genuinely nice guy and vastly talented performer. A skilled jazz trumpeter and multi-instrumentalist, he was a dancer, actor, comedian and presenter, one of those multifaceted entertainers. He died young from lung cancer, although he never smoked. He attributed his illness to endless nights playing trumpet for hours in countless smoke-filled nightclubs. That said, his performance here can be really fucking annoying. I think he just did what the script and director called for him to do, so I'm tending to blame them for that. I liked Roy Castle. Roberta Tovey is one of the less irksome kids to grace the sci-fi genre, and Jenny Linden provides reasonably cute mid-60s window dressing. She transcended this sort of thing when she went on to play Ursula opposite Glenda Jackson, Oliver Reed and Alan Bates in Ken Russell's acclaimed Women in Love. So she was a real actress then, and even got a BAFTA nomination. It's a film made primarily for kids, which might explain why the Daleks aren't quite as steel balls to the wall nasty and evil as their TV counterparts. They're always going to be great sci-fi villains, but here the malevolent space Nazi exterminators seem to have less edge to them. When I was a kid, it was great fun, because in the main I was part of the target audience for it. Now I'm not, which goes for Doctor Who generally. It naturally doesn't impress or engage in the same way. Yet deep down inside, when Roy Castle shouts, in the end and dives to the floor, manipulating them into destroying themselves, there's a part of me that childishly fist pumps the air and cheers. We don't ever fully grow up, do we? If pushed, not that anyone is pushing, I would declare a preference for the second, less financially successful film of the two. The manic colour scheme is toned down, and the underlying themes of the narrative are darker and more reflective of certain British literary works of science fiction. There's a sense of hints of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, as well as echoes of John Wyndham and John Christopher. The alien invasion scenario and post-apocalyptic future dystopia setting provides a more gripping storyline, something with a bit more bite to it. What works well is the set design, the depiction of a war-torn London looking like it's been through the Blitz again, the ramshackle band of hard-scrabble resistance fighters, black marketeers, sly, desperate traitors and collaborators, and the concentration or work camps sprawling around the mine workings. You can add to that, from a technical angle, one of the most convincing models of a flying saucer to be seen on screen up to that point. Then there's the Robo-Men. They're like the Cybermen who appeared in the Doctor Who TV story The 10th Planet, which aired the year Daleks' invasion was released. The Cybermen were space-travelling cyborgs who converted human subjects into more Cybermen, painfully removing their emotions and personalities. The Robo-Men are Cybermen light, nowhere near as creepy or malevolent, played for a tiresome comedy rigmarole when Bernard Cribbins disguises himself as one of their number. Cribbins is this film's Roy Castle. He had a background in comedy and once again is there as a figure of fun and light relief. Like Castle in the previous film, he turns out to be essential to the downfall of the Daleks. If something of a repetitive formulaic approach was forming, it never extended beyond this film, as the planned third entry never transpired. Tovey remains a mostly tolerable juvenile lead and Jill Curzon is knockout lovely. It is good to see some classy thespian support drafted in the form of Andrew Keir as a gruff resistance fighter, Ray Brooks, his younger counterpart, and Welsh actor Philip Maddock on fine sneering form as a mercenary black marketeer who'd willingly sell his own grandmother out to the Daleks for personal gain, which satisfyingly backfires as the Daleks don't seem to like him much either and blow up the shed he's taken refuge in. What's that old saying? Never trust a Nazi, with good fucking reason. They'll blow up the shed you're in. Despite its flaws and failings, Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD is closer to the classic doomy Brit sci-fi model of the 50s and 60s. Maybe its harsher, more adult tone contributed to its downfall, appealing less to the kids of the time, and not quite adult enough for the adults. But for me, it's the slicker, more dramatically appointed, professionally crafted of the two. I get why some purists reject these films and don't like them all that much. Fandom can be like that. But it's my preference to approach and evaluate them as big screen adaptations of the TV show, artifacts that stand alone. And I'd rather have them in existence than not. All the Whovians I've ever met seem to me to be decent people, happily brimming with enthusiasm and passion for their object of affection and interest. I wonder if, in the light of where the show is at today, they don't look back at the two movies now and with a poignant pang in their hearts reflect that they didn't know just how good they had it at the time. No matter how bad you think something is, worth remembering, it can always be worse. Thanks for your time and attention as I rambled my way through another double bill despite swearing to never do one again. Can't help myself, can I? Do whatever you choose to do next, hit like, don't like, comment, subscribe, check out my early access Patreon thing, or even make a welcome financial contribution via the thanks button. Or just resign yourself to wondering when the latest Doctor Who will find an alternative use for the sonic screwdriver as a vibrating butt plug. An episode depicting something similar is bound to turn up at some point. I won't see it, but I will get to hear about it. Bye for now, pilgrims.